A warm welcome to everyone. We are connecting from a wide variety of time zones and from at least 5 different countries to celebrate the appearance of a wonderful book, Malashri Lal's Mandalas of Time. This book has been long in the making, and it has undergone, numerous editings and revisions before finally appearing in its highly exquisite and chiseled shape before you. And to discuss the book, to talk about it, to showcase it, and to read it, we have a grand panel of writers, poets, who have been very, very kind to share their time and generous views with us here today. So to welcome you all to the Hearth Within and to this wonderful session for Mandalas of Time, I would request Jaydeep Sarangi sir to do the honors. Over to you, Jaydeep sir.
Thank you. Great opportunity. And we are here from different time zones. Canada, US, UK, Europe, India, and covering different parts of the world. And first, congratulations, Malashri, for this wonderful collection. And poetry has been Malashri's attempt to bridge the dissimilar legacy in the metrics of time. And time is very important in the book. It's a season of memory. And poetry here is aligned with honest yet indirect reflections of the weird times we live in, as we have been discussing now about the debates. We experience a fresh set of benchmarks. No wind, no storm. We move on. Her use of natural imagery is never unnecessarily exotic, and that's quite very important thing that I could locate. There are poems which are sensuous street, redolent with color and music. The peacock's blue tinged in green, the first flush of dawn, pink petals on the doorstep, abundant pansies, the mango blossoms, Easter lilies blooming in the garden abundantly in an abundant house, all are examples of this unique collection. And amidst these natural delights, the world of women's suffering, endurance, emancipation are never absent. Iconic Indian women names like Sita, Draupadi, Kunti are responsible for holding up the family names as well as reputation as they remain inspiration for generations of Indians and beyond. Hope without an object cannot live. Malashri's mythical references are, as a whole, an instinct of hope and positivity. The poet recalls Rabindranath from the pages of her life. She confesses, as we get in Bashabiri's introduction to the book, I learned from Gurudev, emotions have no fixed language. Really, in the book, as we go along page to page, leaf by leaf, emotions have no fixed language. The mind has no physical limits. Music resounds in the open sky. Dance is the joy of free spirit anywhere. A good poem is a movement in life, and a good poem will always try to reach the conditions of music. Plainly speaking, it takes you from the level you are to a heightened place, like music. Let me quote a few lines from her beautiful poem, Diwali with Goddess. Lakshmi, this evening, Goddess Lakshmi recalls those who are absent by distance and time, love and helplessness, death and sickness. Characters from the great Indian epics galore in the book. They are described subtly and poignantly. And some poems in this collection are rooted in the world of being and feeling, conjuring up senses and sensibilities, values and ethical fabrics. These rich poems make us feel a sense of running, crossing river beds of time, and ultimately inhabiting poetry. Let me quote a few lines from her another beautiful poem in the collection, Family Portrait. My grandmother's portrait merges with mine. Today we have crossed a century to share wrinkles of fatigue. After some lines, she says, more than skin and color, I have inherited her joyful search for infinity. Life's fairy story sees good in evil, light in the deepest darkness. The collection creates the smell of life faithfully. We walk through it. We reach at the end or the last section of the poem of this collection, and we are left with a feeling of hankering for more, more. I think Mandalas of Time has no fear of passing. It stays, it will stay for many, many years to come. And I welcome as a galaxy of starred people in this particular panel. And thank you for being us from different time zones and different times of your day and making it so beautiful. Thank you, Malashri, for this opportunity for Hearth Within to host your book launch. We are really privileged. Thank you, and thank you all for making it a really a special event. I wish the book will go a long, long way. Thank you so much. Over to Basudha.
Thank you, sir. And that was a very, very warm and a beautiful introduction to the book, which is indeed, as Jaydeep sir said, it's a bridge between Malashri's creativity and her academic activism. So this is an artistic activism in its own way. And one finds when one reads the work, reads the book, having visited Malashri's work, one finds a lot of resonant themes that resonate throughout her academic practice. Feminism and mythology and eco-criticism. These are very, very dominant concerns in these beautiful poems that will reach you through Mandalas of Time, brought out by Hawakal this year. And to carry on the discussions further, to illuminate the various facets of the book, I would now like to invite Yogesh Patel. Yogesh Patel has received an MBE for literature. He has co-edited Skylark magazine since 1969 and currently runs Skylark Publications UK. He has been honored with the Freedom of the City of London and has records, films, radio, children's books, fiction, non-fiction books, and poetry collections to his credit. A Poet of Honor at New York University in 2019, the House of Lords and the National Poetry Library have staged his readings. His works have appeared at the PN Review, the London Magazine, the BBC TV and Radio, and numerous anthologies. His most recent collection being The Rabbits, published by the London Magazine's edition. We are very grateful that Yogesh sir has consented to be here and to speak about the book. And over to him. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Basudhara, Jaydeep, and Malashri for inviting me to speak. When Malashri asked me, I didn't hesitate at all because having read her work before here and there, I was quite familiar with it. So it was an honor to be invited. Talking about the book, from the outset, a rush and a clamor of life, accompanied by the hurried buzz, emerge from Lal's poems, making the poems quintessentially Indian. The chakra has two halves. The first half is rich with mythology, and while the latter half opens the chest of nature amidst the others, embracing non-esoteric themes. It will fascinate the Western reader to discover that the context in which they understand diasporic literature is not limited to their understanding of it in terms of nations, cultures, or skin colors. In fact, it also exists within a vast and diverse country like India, where different parts of the country can be culturally quite alien. Lal tells us, therefore, she kept the diary in her own attempt to understand this alienation within a unified identity as an Indian. The collection, therefore, throws you around in the concurrence of her 3 cities and 3 languages that bring in their cultural weight. One of the links of this diversity for Indians is their mythological characters. Don't matter what brand of Hinduism they practice. The focus is on values and aspects of life. We are offered here a rich tapestry of time that spins as mandala, and wherever you stop it with a finger, it tells a myth, often through its contemporary take. The lens is overwhelmingly feminist. The poem Sheila Devi of Amber reminds me of intensity of Seamus Heaney's Bog poems, and Bog Queen in particular. Though the linguistic quest in Lal assumes a different dimension, the music from disintegrating words echoes familiarity. They are not tight, as in Heaney, due to the mythological ties of the poems. Readers may find many poems linear, but some poems, like Sita's Rasoi, stands out because they step away from the immediate to explore the tangential meanings. Sita's Pankha, for example, also juxtaposes values perceived from Pankha's role change in the poem. The strength of Lal's craft emerges in most poems as a revaluation of the past tenets through the timeless human conflicts of heart. As we read in Krishna's illness cured by drinking Charnamrit of beloved, while the wife may be bound by different expectations, the lover is not. Also, it puts the Indian culture in the dock. How come a culture or a nation that talks about the importance of women in the Charnamrut sense can commit hideous crimes against women's dignity? Poems may not raise such questions directly, but like all great art, they fulfill the job of making us stray into such uncharted and questionable waters. Thus, Lal's exploration of mythology elevates poems to something universal. What is the purpose of art if it doesn't make us see differently? Recently, at Ars Notoria, an article appeared by a Muslim female writer depicting all Indian males as rapists. I had very strong arguments against such sweeping generalizations. They speak from the ignorance of what Lal highlights of feminism through her poems and through various characters and her own perspective in this book, which many of these Western readers sold to the political correctness may not understand. The poet's job is to lead us from something of limited perspective to veiled complex concepts where real humans can be discovered. Lal succeeds. In the Jaipur Bazaar poem, the poet shows us how that plays from the darkness of blood diamonds or gems to violent heritage. The poet's eyes for history again helps her to the subtleties of craft. She explains in the following lines without pulling any punches: where women stay encrypted in chiffons, and the luster of pearls covers the scar of her story. The Escape is another poem that demands our attention. With dramatic words like seasonal escape and runs away but hardly moves, she reveals the agonizing depths of oppression in a trap women fall into. The suitcase ends up being a dare. In my view, the latter half of the collection presents Lal with a wider scope to explore her varied sensitivities. The cause can limit poets, as I have found out for myself. The trick is that within that constraint, you must leave the canvas to fetch fresh context. I'm glad Lal frees herself to run away with her proverbial suitcase to nature and other sensitivities in the second half of the chakra. For example, the theme of escape extends to her poem, Transcontinental, and delivers a punchline on our displacement as humans in all things, including nature. I look closely to the man. I look closely to the man on the moon, the footprint of human ego. But all I saw was a large, startling disk, glad to be so far from the earthly pollution. Freedom from the cause has allowed to reveal the real poet in Lal. An example is her poem, Simplicity. She talks of simplicity thus: in losing a sleeper to the muddy rut and still hearing the birds on the crumbling parapet. My fear accentuates when she declares in her foreword, I am at peace. Let me say this to humor you. Sorry, Malashri, we won't allow you that. To be a good poet is to be restless. Even Rumi was. The unease is a prerequisite for a poet, whether it stems from joy, love, hate, anger, activism, spirituality, or absolutely cold intellect. Please remain uneasy as your narratives. They say time heals. In that sense, Mandala of Time is a journey through time to its center, to discover joy from the sadness around us. The idea is contrary, the idea is contradictory, because time constantly moves forward and the past is only what we know. Spiritual meditation only allows the time to be momentarily static, to be a maze of mandala, to discover and feel the context of one's being. Lal has created such mandala of poems. Poems are the time slots, jumbled or arranged. They are complex. The wheel of time is a journey and not the journey's end. These poems are not the end of the journey. Finally, there is an uncanny echo of Dylan Thomas's "Do not go gentle into that night." In Lal's poem, instead, she chants, "Go gently into the sunset." Sentiments are similar, but the approach is different. Thomas pokes the old age with the line, "Rage, rage against the dying of the light." And Malashri gently asks to prepare to go now with dignity, without regret, with grace, without rancor. I conclude with that advice. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was a gorgeous examination, a very befitting tribute to these lovely poems, which indeed, as you say, focus on the idea of time, on the idea of the weaving and the unweaving of the self through time. And they offer new contexts for the exploration of mythologies, both past and present. So thank you for your very, very perceptive analysis of these poems. And from Yogesh Patel, we move on to Anita Nahal from the US. And inviting Anita Nahal, just a brief introduction. Anita Nahal is a CDP, is a Pushcart Prize nominated Indian American author academic. She's the author of one novel, 4 poetry collections, a flash fiction, 4 collections of books for children, and the editor of 5 anthologies. A recent collection of poetry has was launched a few months ago by the Hearth Within. What's Wrong with Kali Women was nominated by Cyril Daberdeen as the Best Poetry Book 2021 for British Ars Notoria and is mandatory reading in a multicultural society course. Her just released novel Drenched Thoughts is also prescribed in the same course at the same university. Her poems have appeared in numerous journals across the world, and she is also a part of an anthology recently released by the Sahitya Akademi. She teaches at the University of the District of Columbia, Washington. She is the daughter of Sahitya Akademi award-winning Indian novelist, late Dr. Chaman Nahal, who is very well known to us, and educationist, late Dr. Sudarshana Nahal. We are very, very grateful that you could be a part of this very special book, and over to you for your insights on the book.
Thank you so much, Vasudha and Jaydeep, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here to celebrate Malaji and Mandalas of Time. Just a thing is, I'm seeing that I'm constantly being logged off. I don't know why, but I'm able to log back in again. So if I log off while I'm talking, please just give me a minute and I'll log back in. And all right, so when I opened Mandalas of Time and pondered on the title a bit, the Meditations of Time, I was intrinsically drawn to this book. My own personal deep, infinite fascination with time, matter, and space. I'm an historian by training and a writer by passion. All of those elements drew me to Malaji's book. I've had the pleasure of knowing Malashri Lal for the last several decades as a former colleague of the University of Delhi. And when I moved to the US, we maintained our connection across oceans and time. She contributed poetry to several of my anthologies, and we also co-edited a poetry together along with 6 other editors. And during this entire time, it wasn't surprising for me to observe her tilt towards writing poetry, given her interest in and perceptive eye for the beauty and challenges of life and living. That curiosity and awareness is intrinsically and emphatically detectable throughout her collection, showcasing Lal's gentle yet dynamic personality, determined to fearlessly embark on the unbeaten path, speak up for the underdog, and make her position clear, while always retaining her everlasting grace. So I am going to present a summary of the book from a review I've just done for the book. Where the review is coming out, it's a surprise when it's published. You will all read it, but I'm going to do a short summary of it. In the book, what I noticed was that Malaji has imparted nuggets of mythological, historical, cultural, and autobiographical nuggets of wisdom, or time and wisdom connected with time. And those nuggets are very compelling, very intoxicating, and presented in a very thoughtful manner. As an historian, for me, any book will hold a deeper meaning if I can find points of reference and then connect those, bringing us to contemporary times and holding inspiration for mentoring for the future. And I found refreshingly the substantial presence of myriad streams of consciousness in Malaji's writings. They reminded me of writers such as Virginia Woolf or James Joyce and other writers. American psychologist Mednick wrote in the 1960s of a concept called associative thought, wherein you express various ideas and then those lead to an amalgam of memories and experiences, giving rise to unique creative reflections. And that is what I overall see in Malaji's book. Talking about the streams of consciousness, the first stream of consciousness that I saw was mythological, historical, and ancestral presentations. So you have Rama, Sita, Shiva, Parvati, Kakei, Bharata. You have historical characters such as Rani Padmini, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Mahatma Gandhi, Rabindranath Tagore, and Maharani Gayatri Devi, to name a few, as well as there are people from Malaji's own life, such as her grandmother, her mother, and granddaughter, and friends. Poems such as the one which Dr. Patel also mentioned, Diwali with Goddess Lakshmi, Krishna's flute, all of those come to my mind when talking about this first stream of consciousness. The second stream of consciousness that I found was feminist postulations that represent or allude to abuse, to claustrophobia, patriarchy, societal injunctions, and expectations, female feticide, among others, expressed in poems like Crushed or Hawa Mahal. Another stream of consciousness that I found was environmental and nature permutations. And there appear to be hidden missives about, for example, where the earth might be headed in some of her poems. To offer examples, autumn, or bougainvilleas. Another stream of consciousness that I found was the vacillating scales of justice between what's good for life and what can bring death nearer in poems such as The New Dawn or Simplicity. Another stream of consciousness that I found was spatial belonging, with places as locators of self-identity, learning, teaching, imbibing, and mentoring. Again, to name a few, poems such as Jaipur Bazaar or Bellagio, Italy. And another stream of consciousness, the last that I found, was COVID-19 and the well-being, particularly of the geriatric population. For example, in the poem, Seniors at COVID Time. Within all these myriad streams of consciousness, I decipher three central correlations. First, a bond between the past and present, focusing on presentism, but without making it a doctrine of actualism, rather in an intentional and suggestive path for future existential paradigms. Second, many poems end with the Hyphora literary text.
I think we have just lost her. I'm sure she'll be back.
Yeah.
Anita, we lost you in that last line, so you will have to just go back and repeat one line, I believe.
One or maybe a couple of lines.
You are muted. You are muted, Anita.
Right. Sorry about this. I don't know why this is happening. I was talking about the second central correlation I found in Malaji's book, which is the using of the Hyphora literary technique, the question mark at the end of the poems. And when I saw that, I was reminded of my own poetry when I had first started writing decades ago. I used to use question mark a lot, and Malaji's technique reminded me and inspired me to revisit that again. Because as I said, it's a great way to raise a reader's fascination by taking the discussion in a whole new direction. And the third central correlation that I found in her poetry was the lapping and overlapping again and again, like in British mathematician John Wenn's diagram. And the lapping and overlapping that I found was of observational and confessional poetry. Furthermore, in all the poems, a feminist approach is definitely apparent, which reminded me of Sandra Harding, who is an American feminist and post-colonial theorist. Her theory, the standpoint theory, which she developed in the 1980s, it focuses on the power play between people as defined by where they are on the ladder of power structures. So that also definitely comes through as a central correlation in Malaji's poetry. Tying all these different streams of consciousness and the central intermeshing threads, one finds a divinity, a universalization of feelings, notions, beliefs, and engagements, forging a rethinking of humanity and hopefully reimagining and altering human destiny. It was an absolute delight to read Mandalas of Time. I couldn't put it down. I was eager to discern what pearls of wisdom a seasoned author and academic like Malaji had imparted. I know, as Yogesh ji mentioned, we all will go back to this collection again and again because it's priceless. It has priceless insight into the journeys of life, body, mind, and heart. Please do get yourself a copy and if possibly the hardcover. I'm going to conclude with one poem so that I can explain how I dissected this poem to understand the different streams of consciousness that I have spoken about. The poem is Jaipur Bazaar. I'm just going to read it. In the gem cutter's hands, twinkling green-eyed emeralds emerge out of blobs of stone from Zambia. Who knows what love and loss are ingrained in this heritage? Question mark. So the first two lines, in the gem cutter's hands, and the title is Jaipur Bazaar, that is presentism, that is time, that is spatial belonging. And when in the second sentence, Malaji talks about twinkling green-eyed emeralds emerge out of blobs of stone from Zambia, when it is combined with Zambia, that is universalization of matter and again spatial, but in a larger sense, transporting us from local to universal spatial belonging. And again, as an historian, I see the historicity, the commonality of humanity, because we all have come from Africa. And then the last two lines, who knows what the love and loss are ingrained in this heritage. Love and loss, the ending of those two lines in the question mark, in the hyphora, is a wonderful technique to open our minds to it in a whole new direction. And talking about love and loss is really talking about living and surviving and thriving. And at the same time, love and loss, when it is connected to heritage in the last lines, that is connecting, taking us back to our personal heritage or combined human heritage, where we are coming from, where we are now, where we are going to do. And all of this, talking about heritage also in my mind connects it to dying and rebirthing. So, and intergenerational, connections. And this all brings me back in the end to the standpoint theory of Harding, that where do we belong personally as individuals, in our family, in our larger space, in society, in the country, nation, and globe. So this one poem itself brings all those streams of consciousness together, and I congratulate Malaji for this fascinating book, and I join you, all of you, in celebrating her. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anita. It was a very, very perceptive analysis of the book, especially when you talk about the historicity of the poems, when you talk about the various strands, of feminism and of the stream of consciousness that merge together to birth these poems. Thank you very much for reading them so closely and for sharing your views with us. And to talk about the making of mandalas, how mandalas actually came into existence, because this is a book that has been long in the making. It has had a very long gestation period, I believe. And Malashri will be the person to talk about how these poems wove through and into her being, and how she gave birth to them finally in this wonderful book that we have. I have a short presentation that I would like to share with everyone. And just a second. Yes, is it visible?
Yes.
Yes, right. So before I begin, I would just briefly, of course, nobody needs an introduction to the poet today. Everybody knows who she is, but just for the sake of formality, Malashri Lal is former professor in the Department of English and former Dean, University of Delhi. She's the author and editor of 17 books, of which the most recent is the one that we are celebrating, Mandalas of Time. She has received research and writing fellowships at Harvard University, Bellagio, and Newcastle, and she's currently convener of the English Advisory Board of the Sahitya Academy. So Malashri, with these very brief words of introduction, I invite you to talk to us about the making of mandalas. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm absolutely overwhelmed and very grateful to the Hearth Within for hosting this program, and to each one of the speakers and those who are going to be reading for giving their time, their intellectual inputs, their fine sensibilities, and their warm appreciation of what I have been able to put together in this book. And thank you, Boshudhara and Jaydeep, for bringing this together. And thank you, Boshudhara, for the visuals that I will be using in the few moments that I speak on the subject of the making of mandalas. To begin with, as Boshudhara rightly said, the poems had a very long period of gestation. They, like Emily Dickinson, I think I would write on the back of newspaper pieces, brown paper bags, envelopes, odd sheets of note paper, and then stick them in somewhere. It was during COVID that it hit me very hard that there is mortality round the corner for each one of us. Doesn't matter which part of the world we are in and what age we are. And I thought, well, nobody's going to find these scraps of paper, and even I don't know where they are. But I was spending 24/7 in the home, as all of us were, and it was a task to do, something that did not need absolute and concentrated attention. So I started putting the material together and was actually quite surprised that so much had been written over the last 20, 25 years. And quite a lot of it had actually been published as individual poems. But I never thought of writing a book or putting it together in that form. So I started looking for any kind of a thread that there might be. It was very obvious to me that the thread had to be feminism. But it also had to be a kind of a gentle feminism, because I do believe that one needs to have a balance between what is understood as the masculine on the feminine side of existence. I don't think is biologically determined. And I also have felt over my many years of academic work that the Indian context is very important. And as a teacher, I would resist the idea of teaching feminism, which began with Mary Wollstonecraft and then went on to Virginia Woolf, etc., because 99.9% women in my country could not afford to even dream of a room of their own. So what kind of feminism were we talking about? So the search began. And within that search, one of the examples was from mythology and the figure of Ardhanarishwar, which is presented to you here. And this is, and I then decided that that's perhaps where I'm going to begin my collection. So it's the first one in the book. And what I have emphasized here is the indivisible unity, the first line, indivisible unity, Parvati and Shiva, forever entwined, women and men interdependent. That is something I deeply believe in. And this poem concludes with the lines just there at the end. In creation, there is only one, Ardhanarishwar, the God who is both woman and man, ubiquitous, limitless, reminder of equality. So the first thing then in the making of mandalas was the gender consciousness done differently through the Indian perspective. And as Dr. Yogesh Patel mentioned, my interest is in showing the diversity within India. And the common link of that diversity often goes back to the ancient past, but I don't like it to be locked there. I want to bring it into a cosmopolitan present. So this was an attempt. Can we move to the next one? So that's a poem called Sita's Pankha. It's been alluded to a little earlier. And I've sort of dedicated it to Jatin Das because the poem came to me while witnessing an exhibition that Jatin had put together of huge hundreds of pankhas in a collection. And then he invited anyone who came to the exhibition to write a poem. And this is what I did. Those pankhas are from my own little collection, not Jatin's. But what I thought was interesting is that this carryover of the ancient past into the present, which I wanted to place before my readers, and also the gender equality carried through in the mythological tales. it's very fortunate in India that mythology keeps getting rewritten. And therefore, this was my way of revisiting Sita. And I imagined that she had actually smuggled away a silken pankha from the palace. And even in their simple household in Chitrakoot, where they're living as forest dwellers, there is the possibility of that symbol of the royal heritage that she brought with her, not to remember it as royal, but to remember it as the commonality that there is between her and other women. So I'll just read the the last few lines. It says, "I sit at my meal." The idea is when Ram and Lakshman are eating, she's sitting there because it's a very frugal household. And when it's her turn to eat, this is what happens. "I sit at my meal. The pankha I give to my Lord Ram. Gently he waves it over my thali of banana leaf and forest fare, nature's plenitude, our household one with my Mother Earth." So here my visit to mythology is linked with eco-criticism. And I do believe that something very sacred in our ancient texts has got lost in between the many years that we have in formal curriculum stayed away from it. The harmony between human beings and nature is integral to the ancient knowledge systems of India, no matter what religion one looks at. And that integration is something that I hope that this poem would bring together. An aside here as to how the book got to be called The Mandalas of Time, I tried to find something that would suggest a unity within the eclecticism that exists in my poetry. And mandalas, to my mind, is not linked to any one tradition, but it generally denotes the notion of pools of consciousness. And whether I was looking at gender equality or I was looking at Sita, the pool of consciousness, although different, is united within my mind, my heritage, my readings, my interests, etc. So it is a kind of a power center that mandalas is often associated with. And it was my hope that these power centers, these bursts of creative energy that God may have given or some source would speak to others. And I can't tell you how grateful I am that all of you are here listening to my brief presentation on how mandalas came to be written. Can we move on to the next one? Okay, this is to relate to what Anita Nahal said about my interest in the stream of consciousness and also speaking about people from the margins. We all recognize these scenes, and while the newspapers were talking about the migrant workers, it bothered me that there was this lumping them all together as though there was no difference between one worker and another. And what was even more hurtful is that the woman's experience was not being talked about in a gender-sensitive way. So I did a couple of newspaper articles, and this particular poem is based on an actual newspaper report. It's called The Woman Migrant Worker, to which I have given a footnote. It's based on a news story. A migrant worker, Shakuntala, risked walking a distance of 1,000 kilometers from Nashik to Satna in the 9th month of her pregnancy. The woman gave birth to the baby on the roadside, rested for an hour, and continued the journey with her newborn. Now, that is a very gendered experience of the woman migrant worker. But this kind of invisibilizing of the woman, particularly the marginalized poor woman, is so common that I wanted to speak up against it. I'll just read the last 3 lines of the poem. Shakuntala took an interval in the long walk home. A newborn joined the walk a few hours later. The mother's crumpled womb was not anyone's concern. Boshudhara, can we move to the last of the 4 slides, please? So this particular poem, Easter Lilies in an Empty Home, is the final poem in the collection, just as Ardhanarishwar was the first. I'm not sure why I put it there, except to suggest that no matter how hard life is, and suffering and dukkha, as the Buddhist tradition tells us, is an inevitable part of everybody's life. And somehow during those 2.5 years of the pandemic, we were both connected and yet disconnected from that constant reminder of the sufferings of life. But life is also about joy. And if we want to look for images of rejuvenation, renovation, and rebirth, it's possibly the life in nature rather than life in human society, which gives us those examples. And this particular poem then came to my mind because I saw these beautiful lilies which bloom for only 2 weeks in the year. And I know this home remains empty for most of the year. And somehow it came together as not only a homage to nature and an homage to ancestry, anybody's ancestry, because I think our 4 mothers and 4 fathers deserve and call for our respect. But it also looks to the future, because in those lilies, I see the promise of rebirth, rejoy, and renovation. So I will read to you the last 5 lines of this poem, which are also the last 5 lines of Mandalas of Time. They calmly grace the garden of a silent home, the owners alive only in obituaries. The lilies don't worry on that count. Buried bulbs know that they will creep upwards in season. Life's renewal is a beautiful certainty. So I want to end on that note and with a promise to Dr. Patel that the restlessness of the poet will remain. But I hope that this particular book has a form and a shape where I saw none when I began. And I'm utterly, utterly grateful for all of you for being here, thinking and speaking about the book. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malashri, for giving us the story of the book, the story of how mandalas came into existence and how these poems have very pearl-like, been born inside your soul, and how they have finally reached us and are enthralling us with their beauty. Thank you very much for these lovely poems and for these images that accompanied them. And now that mandalas has been introduced critically to us, I think it is time to step into the wonderful creative outpour that these poems bring us. And to read these poems, we have 2 wonderful poets and artists. So we will begin with Chaitali Sengupta. Chaitali Sengupta calls herself a poet, writer, and translator. She is a poet, writer, translator. Her debut collection of poems, Cross-Stitched Words, won an honorary mention award at the New England Book Festival 2021. She has 3 translation works to her credit. Her latest translation work is Timeless Tales in Translation, which won the Special Jury Award at the Panorama International Literary Festival. Chaitali, I believe you also have another new book of poems just into the world, and congratulations for that. And we are very happy that you could make time to be with us. So over to you for your lovely poems.
Thank you, Boshudhara. And yes, good afternoon to all of you from Europe. To be a part of this book reading session, this book launch session held by the Hearth Within. And we are indeed celebrating Malashri ma'am's soul-stirring poetry from her beautiful collection of poems, Mandalas of Time. So I have chosen, we have heard so many things and very interesting, perceptive things about the book. I really enjoyed that. And I have chosen 2 poems from this particular book. One has a distinct appeal and connection to Europe. And that is the first one. So the first one is Bellagio, Italy. And this is how it goes. Bellisama's shrine and Sita's exile met strangely on the hilltop of an ancient manor house. Villa Serbolini, Bellagio, overlooking Lake Como. How did I come here? Asked the prisoner of Ashokavan. Was it the power of a writer's pen that propelled this journey? A goddess lives beyond time and geography, said the deity of the lake. Remembering hoary Roman times, Celtic chalice of stone and water from secret wells, Sita of my imagination followed me through the snow-clad landscapes of vines. Pendant with glistening drops of ice, Sita murmured to me of her travails and her choices. Sita was completely at home in what I thought was an alien space, for she and the Celtic goddess had a common sisterhood in endurance and in hope. You have so wonderfully merged the myths, ma'am. I was completely, in awe after I read this poem of yours. So that was my first poem. And the second one is also a very beautiful one, and it is called The Songs of the Forest. And it brings back my own memories of Tagore's Shantiniketan when I visited it. So, Song of the Forest. Shantiniketan's music flows through the Shonajuri trees, oblivious to the rickshaw horns and the chatter of a Saturday market. Simple acacias renamed by Gurudev in harmony with his abode of peace. The golden petals float down in season and rest lovingly on the red earth, whispering, always whispering, the secret of ancient melodies. The Mayurakthi river joins the next stanza of the song, remembering the peacock tails it was named for. Its 1,000 eyes now gazing at the scattered gold and wondering if the syllables were right. In the sequence of creation, the Moner Manush offered no easy answer. So, the last line, it was absolutely so touching. And I'm just very honored to read out these poems, dear ma'am. And if time permitted, I probably would have read many more. I'm enjoying reading your book, and I thank all of you for having me here.
Thank you, Chaitali. You chose 2 very, very beautiful poems to showcase the collection, and you read them so beautifully. Thank you very much. And from Chaitali Sengupta, we move on to Meena Chopra. Meena Chopra is a visual artist based in Canada. She's a digital artist also and a poet. She has been practicing poetry and visual art for over 3 decades and has exhibited her art in many countries across the world. Her paintings are with many corporations, government bodies, embassies, hotels, and private collections in India, Australia, Canada, Switzerland, etc. She's a painter, sculptor, a designer, producer, curator, and a poet. And all these arts merge together often when she's practicing them. So I would like to invite Meena ma'am to read out poems from Mandala for this beautiful evening. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Basundhara and Jaydeep, for inviting me for this. And I feel very much honored. And congratulations once again to you, Mala, and thank you for the acknowledgement in the book. So from the wide spectrum of Mala's poems, I have selected 3 poems on most intimate and delicate relationships. To me, they appear to be very powerful. So not wasting more time, I'll just dive into the poems. And I really got goosebumps when I read this one. so close to life, dreaming of Ma by the sea. You live somewhere between the black night and the bright star, free of body and its temporal limits, in green leaves turning to red in a mellow autumn. I catch a glimpse of the sari pallu on that day. You knew life was short and might become shorter in the shimmer of an unsteady wave of the lake. I recall your tremulous smile when you whispered, trying a hopeless cure. In the rough-hewn rocks that line the harbor, I remember your will to fight an uneven battle with the rough sails. Here, on shores unknown, to you and me, we meet again. When the dark sky rests on the sparkle of stars, living and dying are no longer apart. It's too sensitive. It's too much. And the second one is family portrait. My grandmother's portrait merges with mine. I think Jaydeep read it, part of it. Family portrait. My grandmother's portrait merges with mine today. We have crossed a century to share wrinkles of fatigue, intuition, understanding. She smiles vainly, I smile bravely, but our lips curve in exactly the same way. People say it's family likeness, more than skin and color. I have inherited her joyful search for infinity. And the third one is prayer for a granddaughter. It somehow reminds me of Khalil Gibran also. The sun rises to a new orbit, turning the cosmic center towards little eyes, opening to the rhythm of seasons that you'd not known before, from the peaceful floating in the womb, sheltered from the vagrants of nature. You will now meet light and shadows, silence and sounds. The world will open its arms towards you. Embrace your little being in love and trust, and you will touch divinity on your first night. May you be blessed with eyes that see the sorrow in others' eyes. And may your tiny hands reach out to help those in grief and pain. May your lips speak sweetly of the grace in this world, beyond suffering and despair, to cheer those in darkness. May you honor your ancestors whose gene sleeps within you, those who dreamt of freedom and kinship for little women such as you. So beautiful. What a thoughtful prayer, Mara. And it couldn't have been better. So thank you very much for inviting me to read these. I feel deeply honored.
Thank you very much, Meena ma'am. You selected some very wonderful poems and you read them so poignantly that I believe you brought out the best from them. Thank you very much for choosing these particular poems. And while we come to the formal conclusion of a beautiful session, we are very grateful that we have so many friends of Malashri who are here to join us to celebrate the book. And I would like to open the session and invite them all to offer their comments if they wish. Sanjukta Di, we would love to have you say something. Shamila ma'am is also here. Sanjukta Di, yes. We'll begin with Sanjukta Di and then over to anyone who would like to speak.
Purna is here and many others.
Sanjukta Di, over to you.
Mala, an outstanding, exquisite creation, because a book is a creation. Yes, we call it creative writing. And all the poems are absolutely so different from what one would have expected from a debut book of poems. And here, I think, Mala, you will remember that when we used to teach John Donne, there was one line, and I don't like the idea of attributing it to you, but I have to. And it is intellect at the tip of the senses. So when an intelligent mind, a compassionate mind, a creative mind come together, we have poems of this sort. And it's a brilliant book. And I just want to congratulate you. And I will look forward to the next one. And let's not wait so long. Yes? All right. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm not going to read any poems.
Thank you, Sanjukta Di. Thank you very much. And yes, though you, you spoke for the briefest while, you said the most significant thing, the intellect at the tip of the senses, indeed, is an appropriate metaphor to describe this wonderful book. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
I would like to invite anybody else who would like to speak about these poems. Shamila ma'am is here. Shamila ma'am, would you like to say something? Navamalati Di is here. Seema ma'am is here. Urna is here. So over to anyone who would, like to speak on mandalas. To Malashri Di, congratulate her. Yes, Seema ma'am.
Congratulations for the book. I don't have the book with me. Otherwise, I would have loved to read one of the poems.
Yeah.
But congratulations, and I think I am just going to get the book tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, Navamalati Di. Yes, Seema ma'am wanted to say something.
I would like to, first of all, congratulate Malati once again for this wonderful, wonderful collection of poems. And I was listening to all the speakers very intently. And first of all, I would like to agree with Sanjukta ma'am, who said that it is, poems with intellect on the tip of senses. I was also remembering Donne and this fusion of intellect and senses and sensibility in the poems while reading many of the poems. And Malaji talked about this gentle and soft feminism. That is one of the most beautiful things about these poems that I also agree with. Apart from that, I feel that probably, not much has been said about another aspect of the book, and that is the deep symbolism that is there in many of the poems. And the symbols, they emerge very inadvertently, very softly, and they point to so many different layers of meaning. So the poems are very multidimensional and layered. And then the Western literary traditions and the Indian context, they have been blended so seamlessly into many of the poems. So I could go on and on probably, but perhaps this is not the right time. Probably I'll communicate all that I feel about the book sometime later. And if time allows, I would like to read a poem that touched me very deeply from this book. Vasudhara, do we have time? Can I go ahead with it?
Of course, yes, of course. We will conclude with that.
So, the poem is Lessons from the Ganga. This is one poem that I loved when Maladi sent it for being included in the anthology that I was editing for the Sahitya Akademi, Vibrant Voices. It's a part of that book also. And from that moment onwards, I was in love with this poem, Lessons from the Ganga. And I believe while describing the journey of Ganga, Malaji has very subtly talked about the journey of women's lives. And the way she has described it, it incorporates not only the hurdles that come her way, the obstacles, the hurdles, but also the gentle but firm manner in which the waters of the river Ganga overcome these hurdles and move on towards their destination. So the poem is, she is young and wise, rushing over boulders, trying not to break her stride. There are times she gets stuck. Eddies come in the way. An outcrop stretches its leg. Ganga throws her foaming waters into a swirl, tries to bypass the stone. Difficult, she turns round and round in a whirlpool madly. Then I watch and learn that the confusion is partial. And this is the part I loved about the poem. And I watch and learn that the confusion is partial, just one half of her being. And I think this applies to the poet's self too. You know, what is revealed in her poetry is just one part of what lies hidden and submerged. The other part creatively works another trick. The waters twist themselves away from the swirling pool slowly, bruised, frothing with fatigue, finally to emerge past the blockage, once again, smilingly on her way. So this is the poem I wanted to share with all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we come to the end of a very, very beautiful. Yes, yes, Urna, please.
Can I say a few
yes,
words?
Yes, of course.
So thank you so much, Basudhara, Jaydeep sir, Malashri ma'am, Shangjukta ma'am. It's such a pleasure to see you. And
good to see you too.
All the speakers, you know, I've just been soaking up the surplus flow of ideas and thoughts. And Malashri ma'am spoke about the ancient knowledge systems of India. And there was that line from that poem, "A goddess lives beyond time," which has just kind of, you know, just made its way into my heart. I'm going to grab my copy tomorrow because I feel we all understand the linearity of time, right, from the perspective of physical matter. But and time is just not timeline. And it takes a while, I think, especially when you start reading poetry and start appreciating poetry and writing poetry, it takes a while to understand what our Eastern traditions tell us, right? That time is really a wheel, the Yuga Chakra, and which is why time is divided into all the yugas, the Satya, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali. And I just, today, as I was listening to all of you, I just fell in love with the title, The Mandalas of Time, because I feel it is almost like a primal, larger nod, an acknowledgement to the circularity of time and its relationship to matter, mind, and spirit. And I don't know, I'm just going to walk away from this evening with that sense that, with that line that Malashri ma'am read, I don't know who read, but the buried bulbs know they will creep up on us on seasons. And that is so beautiful. So thank you so much for bringing to us this sense of time. And I think our inner understanding that the Holy Trinity is really within us, right? I mean, of creation, sustenance, and destruction. So, yeah, so thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Una. Thank you very much. And we have really been enriched by everyone who has been present this evening to share our joy and love for this wonderful book. And to formally conclude, I would invite Jaydeep sir to deliver the word of thanks.
Nothing to conclude, which should go on and on, isn't it? So we don't want to move. But we will have to make a full stop to start afresh as well. So as I concluded that I think the book will be, as Sangjukta said, we are hungry for the next book. So from Malashri, and spots of time or mandalas of time, whatever it may be. But it is a part of New Indian English poetry, and Malashri is a rare tribe, and we are enriched. India is enriched. India will shine with this book once again with another beautiful collection. Thank you, Malashri, for wonderful range of poetry and wonderful panelists from different parts of the globe, and all our poets, all our writers, as well as academic. So it was a rare treat in this evening to listening to all of you. All who made inputs like Sangjukta Di, Urna, and Navamala Didi, and everyone, and Shima ma'am, and all wonderful audience. Shamla Narayan was also here. Thank you for wonderful readings and inputs into the making of canon of Indian English poetry. So we are a powerful canon now. Thank you so much, Malashri, for giving us an opportunity. From myself and from Bashudhara, we take the pride of hosting it. Thank you. We look forward to another collection by any one of you to host. Earth Within is hungry to host new collections. We are looking forward to it. Thank you so much. So more power to poetry, more power to the poetry. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.